Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Kellyanne Boyce, and I proudly serve as president of the Chautauqua Women's Club. Welcome to our Contemporary Issues Forum, or CIF for short. We gather here every Saturday at 3 p.m. through August 22nd. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you're one of our many returning friends, thank you for spending part of your afternoon with us. I'm so happy you are all here. So before we begin, I'd like to thank those who make today's program possible. We have Jake, our videographer in the back, Deb Treffs, another wonderful article, actually 2 articles today regarding the Women's Club, so thank you for your coverage. We have Jean, our usher. We have Hope, and over at the table, you're alone by yourself today, but thank you all. A special shout out to Allison Anderson, who helped organize a women's club trip to Sarasota a few years ago and connected us with Pedro. So thank you, Allison. We are deeply grateful to our generous 2026 program sponsors, to our anonymous donor, Chrissy Fulton and George Fector, Lauren Rich Fine of Beatrice Advisors, Susan O'Connor Baird, McGee Women's Research Institute, and Kathy Bonner, Mary Lou Goodman, and Josette Raleigh in loving memory of Rita Argan Auerbach. Thank you for believing in the Women's Club and our mission of lifelong learning. Thank you. So for 137 years, the Chautauqua Women's Club has been bringing people together through curiosity, learning, and community. We exist to inspire and empower women, and yes, the men who love them. Today, we are proud to have more than over 100 men as members, and we're grateful to every one of them. This year, it's been all over, and I'm going to shout it from the rooftops, but we have celebrated a remarkable milestone with our most recent scholarship gift to the Chautauqua Institution. The Women's Club has now contributed more than $2 million in scholarships over 42 consecutive years. And that's a legacy we're incredibly proud to carry forward. If you'd like to learn more about membership and our year-round Chautauqua Academy programs, visit the chautauquawomensclub.org website or stop at the table after the lecture. I will also say that there are QR codes on the table there. Hope you can, yep, she's raising them. And that is, there's a video, a YouTube video of Pedro. So I encourage everyone on the way out just to snap a quick picture and see all about the wonderful video on Pedro. We also, don't forget to visit our famous tent sale at the Women's Club. It's over today now, but our second day will be from 11 to 3 tomorrow. Okay, now on to today's speaker. Many of you spend part of the year in Sarasota, and if you do, you certainly know the Circus Arts Conservatory. It's far more than a performing arts organization. As I learned more about Pedro and the extraordinary institution he helped build, I couldn't help but noticing a wonderful parallel. For generations, the Chautauqua Women's Club has been a part of the heartbeat, or the heartbeat of this community. And in many ways, I believe the Circus Arts Conservatory is part of the heartbeat of Sarasota. But not because somebody officially gave it that title, but because generations of families have embraced it as an essential part of the city's cultural life. Pedro Reis has spent a lifetime helping build that legacy. Born in South Africa, Pedro discovered the flying trapeze at just 11 years old and went on to perform around the world, including with the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. He's been before royalty, presidents, and audiences across Europe and the United States. But as remarkable as his performing career was, his greatest contribution may have come after he stepped out of the spotlight. Together with the legendary aerialist Dolly Jacobs, Pedro helped transform the Circus Arts Conservatory into one of America's premier performing arts and educational organizations. preserving Sarasota's rich circus heritage while inspiring new generations through education, outreach, and extraordinary performances. So today, Pedro is writing yet another chapter. Through the spirit of circus, he is creating bold artistic collaborations that pair circus arts with Shakespeare, ballet, museums, and cultural institutions. Did that just go off? Okay. Reimagining where circus belongs and introducing it to entirely new audiences. It's a wonderful reminder that creativity knows no boundaries when visionary people are willing to think differently. I also want to thank Robin Eldridge, who is here with Pedro this weekend. Robin's inspiration and creativity literally sparked Pedro to new heights. So welcome. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. So please make sure you return next Saturday, August 1st. We have a speaker named Sarah Johnson, whose debut novel, Grown Women, won both the NAACP Award, Image Award for Outstanding Literary Work by a debut author, and the Zora Award for debut fiction. In her talk, Grown Women, Intergenerational Healing Through Fiction, she'll share how storytelling can help us better understand ourselves and our families and one another. So I hope you'll join us. Today's lecture will last approximately 30 to 40 minutes, followed by 15 minutes of questions. There's microphones on both sides here. Please keep your questions concise and no Chautauqua preludes, please. If you don't want to be recorded, please refrain from asking a question. And please speak right into the microphone. So, please now join me in giving Pedro Reis a warm Chautauqua welcome.
Wow. Good afternoon, everyone. It's indeed a great honor and privilege to be at Chautauqua, to not only speak about my journey, but also to speak about the true passion, the circus art that I love so dearly. At this time, I'd just like to say a huge shout out and a thank you to Kellyanne Boyce and to Alison Anderson for making this happen. Truly appreciate it. A couple of quick circus facts. I believe that the circus is one of, if not the longest running, and if not the oldest, family entertainment that started way back in antiquities with cavemen, drawing on cave walls, dancing around fires, telling stories. And the history of circus in the United States, the first complete circus was actually in 1793. An English equestrian, John Bell Rickards, had the first circus, which goes way back to Philadelphia. And a little fact about the ring, the circus ring, that was invented and credited to Philip Ashley in 1768. And the reason for the circus ring, which is 42 feet in diameter, is that he was a trick rider and he wanted the horse to go at a steady pace, which would help him stay on the back of the horse easier. So because prior to that, the horses were running in a gymkhana rectangular event, and so the horse would have to slow down, speed up, slow down, speed up. But with a ring of 42 feet, he could jump on the horse, stay on the horse's back, jump on the horse, jump back on. So that's a little circus fact about the circus ring. I'm not from a circus family in the tradition of handing down the folk art. I'm first generation, and my story begins at the local YMCA in Cape Town, South Africa. As Kelly mentioned, I was 11 years old, and my parents moved from one suburb to another, and lo and behold, when I woke up the next morning, went across the street, there was a flying trapeze rigging and a trampoline. Needless to say, I can tell you right now, I got into lots and lots of trouble sneaking in through the fence, especially at night when nobody was around, jumping in the trapeze nets and jumping on the trampoline. And eventually I got to know the young teenagers that were training to be trapeze artists and training to go abroad to Europe. The Flying Trapeze School was started by a man by the name of Keith Anderson. At that time he wasn't around, he was actually touring in Europe. So I got to know these kids, and I became the runner to the cafeteria, pick up a Coca-Cola or whatever they needed. And then one day I said, do you mind if I go up on the flying trapeze and swing? And they said, sure. Took me up on the flying trapeze, and the bug hooked me. That was it. I wanted to be a flying trapeze artist. I wanted to do triple somersaults, but I was only 11 years old. But I stayed with it, and through that journey, I started inviting some of my schoolmates, and they would come over to the YMCA, and they got involved on a trampoline and flying trapeze. Then eventually Keith Anderson returned and noticed all these young students that were around at the YMCA instead of the teenagers from the Y, and decided then to start a full youth circus school. So it was the YMCA Circus of Youth, and we had every discipline you can think of. It was outside on the old basketball courts at the YMCA, and that was truly the beginning of my career in the circus world. Later on, after high school, and I don't usually tell everybody the story, but I literally walked out of school. I was in my matriculation year, 12th year, and 3 months into the final year, I took my books to the principal's office and said, I won't be needing these books anymore. I'm joining the circus. True story. So at the YMCA, there was a nucleus of us, and 1978, late 78, 79, we actually took a troupe to Europe. We did 7 different circus acts, including triple lane flying trapeze, which means you had 3 catchers instead of the single one catcher. We did high wire, we did double trampoline, we did comedy and various other acts, acrobatic acts. That journey took me to England, Denmark, Norway, Sicily, Paris. I think I mentioned Holland, and then eventually back to South Africa. We stayed together as a troupe for 4 years. But during that time, a lot of the teenagers that were with us, catchers, flyers, they didn't want to stay as long as the others and decided they wanted to go back to South Africa. So we had to keep finding replacements, catchers, flyers, acrobats. And in our 3rd year of traveling, we decided we were going to go back to South Africa, tour the Boswell and Wilkie Circus one more time for a year, and then split, abandoned, and then go our own ways. But I can tell you, though, that that first experience of being a teenager and going to Europe for the very first time was quite educational in many, many ways. Culturally, experiencing our first winter in Europe, being from South Africa, it was pretty awful sometimes. For example, in Paris was my first European winter, and I got bronchial pneumonia. And in the circus business, it's the show must go on. This person bought a ticket, they want to see you up there no matter what. So knowing that, even with bronchial pneumonia, I was up on a pedestal in Paris doing flying trapeze with a little tissue, just every time I coughed up some blood. And we wore red tights so you wouldn't see any blood if there was any spillage. There's some true stories in that vein. But it made us tougher and really appreciated everything that we earned. And then after in South Africa, when we split up, I was wondering, well, what am I going to do now? I could do a triple somersault, but at the same time was what we would consider a mediocre flying trapeze artist, an acrobat. A friend of mine showed me a video of an aerial act that worked without any safety devices. And they were the Clarence, a French duo. And the catcher would hook his legs into what we call a cradle, a metal frame. And the flyer, the leaper, would stand on the pedestal and literally jump out into the midair. The catcher would then extend his body out, and they would catch. The catcher would be the pendulum, and then you would do somersaults, pirouettes, different various tricks, and hopefully not fall. So I looked at it, thought about it, and realized that there was nobody on the market doing this crazy act, and that this could be something that we could take on and, raise us to the perception of being recognized as truly great artists and daredevils. So on Boswell and Wilkie Circus, while doing 3-4 acts, sometimes doing 3 shows a day, we started practicing. So we would practice between shows, after the show, every spare moment we had, we practiced. And then we had to come up with a name, and I think we came with an apt name, and the act was called The Survivors. So I'm still here. The Survivors was a 4-person team. My catcher Stanley, Karen, my girlfriend, and then Robert. And the story about Robert is, even though we grew up in apartheid and during apartheid times, we at the school, and during those times when we actually put on performances and sold tickets, in South Africa at that time, you would have to pull a special permit to have a multiracial audience. Well, we totally ignored everything and we just did what we wanted to do. And Robert, his mom was actually one of the servants at this one school, and he was fascinated by what we were doing. He was a young boy of 12 years old, 11, 12 years old, and he got interested in trampoline and acrobatics. And I said to him, I said, hey, are you interested in learning more about circus? And would you be interested in joining my troupe? And he said, yes, of course. So we gave Robert, the first black African boy to ever leave South Africa as a true trapeze artist and circus artist. And today he's up in Chicago doing very well. And it's good to know that you've helped somebody along the way. So it feels good. That act, The Survivors, was truly one-of-a-kind act. Our first contract was in Switzerland with a circus called Circus Arts. And when we arrived, the director, Franz, didn't really know what we did. He just booked us through an agent. We had a Flying Trapeze Act, which was more popular than the Survivor Act. And when he saw what we did, he started calling his promoters, his friends. And I'll back up a little bit. We couldn't get a contract to go to Europe because nobody knew who we were. And a clown troupe, the Cheekies, that were on Bosman World Circus with us, did us a favor, called a friend, Franz Nock, and got us a contract. So arriving in Switzerland, nobody knew who we were, but after 1 week, we had contracts booked for next year already, because it was so unique and so dangerous, literally. The story about that was that in Interlaken in Switzerland, we got the director came over and said, hey, I've got news for you. The owners and directors of Ringling Brothers Barn and Bailey Circus are coming to see you. They heard about your act and they're scouting. And for us, it was always a dream to go to the United States, obviously, and join Ringling. So we got to meet Irvin Felt, the father, and Kenneth Felt, who now runs Felt Entertainment. They saw our act perform, and the next day we signed a contract to go to the United States, and that was in 1984. So we had a 2-year contract with Ringling, 84, 85. But still, during Switzerland, I unfortunately had my first accident. So it was in Basel. It was a rainy day. The ground was sloped to one side, and I did a pirouette. And it was one of those moments where you just knew as you executed it, you weren't going to make it. So I thought, okay, but I always wondered what it was like to fall. So now I was going to fall. So and my brain kicked in, everything kicks in over time, and I realized, twist to your back. I have a broad back, take the shock on your back, and you should be okay. So I fell about 30 feet, twisted, landed on my back, knocked the wind out of me, but unfortunately my heel caught, and I broke my heel. I apologized to the director for screwing up the show, screwing up my contract. I got a replacement to take my place in the act, not doing these dangerous tricks and stuff like that. Took 6 weeks to heal and was back up doing it again. And then still made the contract to go to America. On Ringling, let me tell you, in the arenas, it was concrete floor. And every arena you went to was different. And let me tell you something about the arenas and the seating and the colors, blue, green, red, black, balconies. It all changes your perspective of acrobatics. And there was one time in the 2 years on Ringling, when you do an aerial feat and you go to catch, you're going wrist to wrist, okay? And it's very solid, very sure. And in this one particular show, I'll never forget it. It still gives me goosebumps thinking about it. I did a front somersault. My catcher stretched out completely horizontal, and I'm spinning, doing a front somersault. And in a front somersault, at one moment you are completely blind because you can't see your catcher. And then when you come out, you just see the hands. And this is how we caught. All right? I don't think I've ever squeezed harder ever in my life than that particular time. But I'm still here to talk about it, and it was okay. But on that note, imagining that what could have happened with a concrete floor to fall onto, my catcher Stanley came up to me one day and said, I can't do this anymore. And it's an ironic story because when we came to America, I met a man from Spain, his name was Kiriki, who did the same act in 1952. That was the last time it was seen before we came in 84. And in Madison Square Gardens, the leaper, jumped out, the catcher went horizontal to do a front somersault, and before he let go to do the flip, the catcher froze, didn't let him go, completely lost his nerve. They came down, packed their bags, and that was it. That was the end of the act, and that was 1952, and then Hello Survivors, 1984. But after a while, I said to my catcher, look, let's finish the contract. Let's shake hands. We'll go to Europe. We'll do Monte Carlo. We'll do BBC television. We'll work at the Carré Theatre in Holland, very prestigious place. And then we'll disband and everything will be okay. And it's funny because, like in any business, you're working your way up to basically work on the best shows. And in Europe, the gold standard of Circus Arts is the family Knie. And we were in the Carré building, performing, and the director of Circus Knie came to me and said, my family would like to book your act for next year. And I had to say, I'm sorry, Mr. Knie, but we won't be doing the act anymore. But it was great, though, to be able to be invited to perform on the show. It just showed our standard and the level of where we were. And so that was, Star-Lords was a 4-year run with the troupe. Survivors was a 4-year run with the 4-man troupe. And then I decided I was going to go solo. My solo act, called the Cloud Swing, was a 35-foot rope attached at 2 points. And it would be a pendulum, and it would swing, and then we would jump, fall, catch by one leg, catch by one hand. But there are many, many Cloud Swing acts. And to differentiate myself and to do something completely unique or crazy, I did this jump, which nobody else has ever done and might not ever do. I used to do a jump completely releasing the Cloud Swing, fly across the ring 26 feet, and then catch a rope that was suspended on a single pulley system. But it was a trick because the rope was actually pulled up on a cable system and tied off with a piece of string. At the end of the cable was a 10-foot bungee. So I would jump, catch the rope 30 feet, 35 feet up in the air, the string would break, I would drop, free fall 25 feet, and then the bungee would take the tension, and then 2 seconds I'd touch the floor, let go of the rope, and be on the ground. So it was, again, fantastic that I was the only one doing it. And then, of course, the accident. Big Apple Circus, New York, 2-year run, 1 week to go before the end of the season. Before my act, the horses were running, so I couldn't set the rigging myself. So after the horse act, I would ascend to the Cloud Swing, and while I was doing that, the riggers would bring the cable over, tie the string, shackle the bungee. Now this particular show, Brewster, New York, never forget it. I finished the act, getting ready to do the jump. There was a drum roll. I leaped, flew through the air, felt the string break, perfectly normal, then landed without the bungee. So my good ankle had 2 plates and 18 screws, and unfortunately my right ankle it had a subtalar fusion. So the doctor said, well, that's the end of your career. And in our business, you never say never. So Dolly Jacobs, who was mentioned by Kelly, she was an aerialist, and she got a contract to do a tour with Hammett Circus. And I thought, why not? This was after I had worked out at the gym every day, 3 hours a day, and got my strength back. I called Hammett and said, hey, would you like to book my cloud swing act? He said, well, I didn't know you were doing your cloud swing act again. Oh, I've been doing my cloud swing act. Everything's great. So he said, sure, we'll book your cloud swing act. I hadn't been up on the cloud swing since the accident. So I quickly went to Sailor Circus, which is an arena in Sarasota, started training, put everything up, practiced hard, got my act together, and did the tour with Hammett Circus, quite well knowing that if ever I had any slip, fall, whatever the case, it would be catastrophic because of my injuries already. And on that tour in Detroit was the first time. How many people here know the name Wallanders? Sure. I'd say it's the most famous or infamous name in the United States for the circus world. But in Detroit, it was in '65, I believe it was, where they had a bad accident, a bad fall, where unfortunately one of the troop members was killed and one was in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. But they recreated that 7-man pyramid there in Detroit, and I was part of that show. Came to the end of the run, I realized that I decided right then that, that's it. I've had enough of doing this. And I changed my costume, rolled up my rope, put my boots and everything in the bag, and I called it closing the zipper. And I knew exactly what I was doing, closing the zipper. It was the end of an era for me as a performer, as a aerialist daredevil. And then I was saying, okay, so what's next? All right, so then I came up with the cliche. Instead of saying number 1, number 2, number 3, I just came up with number next. So number next was starting a professional circus school. And starting it as a non-profit organization so that we could actually give back to the community through the Circus Arts. We borrowed $125,000. We bought a used tent and set it up in Sarasota. And you from Sarasota know where Sam's on Cattleman. That's where we had the tent the first time. And we believed if you build it, they will come. All right, that's a school of hard knocks. No marketing budget. And anyway, we had an incredible show. We actually had the Wallanders performing the 7-man pyramid. We had Cossacks from Kazakhstan. And they believed in the idea and the vision of what we wanted to do, was bring back the living circus to Sarasota because of such a rich history in Sarasota. We thought it was brilliant. And with that, giving back to the community, creating educational programs, but also humanitarian programs where our artists would go into assisted living facilities, nursing homes, and really partner with and do some good in the community. Well, it's been almost 29 years now since we formed that organization. It was truly a hard ride. Starting a non-for-profit is not easy. Knowing nothing about starting a non-profit is even harder. So we had to literally start from the beginning, learning how to write grants, learning how to get people trust. Our first board president was Andy Carlson, and he introduced me and us to a few other members. And slowly but surely, we started building a reputation. People started believing in what we did. And we started creating an incredible board, and the donorship started growing. And the journey of the Circus Arts Conservatory, which started off as the National Circus School of Performing Arts, we later changed that name to Circus Sarasota because we truly had the cart before the horse, trying to do educational programs. What we did know is how to do the circus. So we started doing the circus more and more, changed the name to Circus Sarasota. Then in 2011, we took over the guardianship of a program, the longest running youth circus program in the United States. It's called Sailor Circus. And the reason why it's called Sailor Circus is because it started at the Sarasota High School. And a football team, in order to play football up in Tampa, they used to sail. So they were the sailors. And hence, when the circus school started, out of the PE program, the circus program was called Sailor Circus. So in 2011, we took over their program. Now we had Sailor Circus, Circus Sarasota, and it became confusing. So we adopted the name of the Circus Arts Conservatory, which was important because we aligned with education and the arts. And to back up, son, when we first started earlier, before the tent, our first performances was at the John and Mabel Ringley Museum of Art. And there we partnered with the Ringley Museum and really developed an amazing partnership. They have a little theater called the Historic Oslo Theater, and through the partnership, we put on performances for the past 20 years during the summer, and it is a 9-week program now, very successful. So again, keeping the circus arts alive, keeping the brand out there was very important. So I've told you about falling, and I've told you about non-for-profits. But at the Sailor Circus, when we took over the Sailor Circus program, it was an arena. We raised $5 million because there was no air conditioning. So imagine in July, August, trying to do circus arts. It was unbearable. So with the $5 million of donations, we built new office space, putting new seating, putting air conditioning. Most important was the air conditioning. And the program is still flourishing today. Another catastrophic incident that we experienced, and one of when the show must go on, was when Nick Wallander was performing and trying to execute, instead of the 7-man pyramid, the 8-man pyramid. And it was the day before we opened. His sister had flown in to take the place of somebody that couldn't make it. And unfortunately, that afternoon, during the 2 p.m. rehearsal, they had a bad fall where I was there, I witnessed the whole thing. It was horrific. And we really didn't know if the show could continue or if even the Wallanders could continue further. There was a huge press conference, and we stated that the show must go on. And so we adjusted the act. They did their high wire performance, and the show did carry on. But that was another show of how we are so dedicated to the art that we do and dedicated to the ticket holder that we believe that there's no such thing as can't. I want to talk a little bit about some of the collaborations that we've done as well. One of the collaborations was with Robert DeWarren, who was then the CEO and artistic director for the Sarasota Ballet. A volunteer, Ann Silverstein, had suggested we get together and see if we can do something with the ballet. I said, absolutely, we'd love to. I met Robert, we talked about it, and we wrote a ballet, circus ballet called Kardazan, the House of John. And that was on the property of the Ringley Museum, was the House of John. It was an incredible ballet, circus, dance, and then through that collaboration, a gentleman by the name of Richard Storm came over to me, and he was the artistic director of a choral group, Key Chorale, in Sarasota. And he said, we'd like to collaborate with you as well. So I met Joseph Corkins, the maestro. We got to be talking, and then 16 years later, the collaboration we do with Key Chorale, we call it Cirque des Voix, which is Voices of the Circus. It's a 42, 46-piece orchestra and 100 voices in the choir with circus. And it's been super successful. In 2017, we were privileged and honored to partner with the Smithsonian. The program for 2017 was called Circus Arts. It was a 3-year in the making program. And I had the opportunity of taking our big top, a 42-meter European-style big top, and placing it right on the National Mall. We had over 1 million people participate. And during this time, I discovered the number of circus schools and how popular circus schools have become in the United States. When I came to America in 1984, there were about 3 or 4 circus schools. In 2017, when we did the program in the Smithsonian, there were over 300. And the numbers climbing. Circus has really become popular and cool, and that's very touching for me to know that. The circus, I don't know if you all realize, the word circus is very challenging because it does carry a perceived perception here in the United States. I'll just throw out Bozo, I'll throw out the Sideshow, I'll throw out the White House, Uh, you know, and so when we took this on right from the beginning, almost 29, 30 years ago, we knew we had a challenge. And the challenge was to raise the perception of the circus, be recognized for the art form that it is. So there's been a lot of us circus folks beating the drum. And I will say that in 2017, we had a blue panel conference, and the director of the NEA was there, and he made a statement. He said, I want to declare that circus is art. And that was very meaningful and very powerful for us to hear that circus is art. You know, and also mention the word traditional. Today, there's a lot of contemporary circus art as well. So it's a nice mix of contemporary circus, traditional circus. But no matter what the form of circus it is, it's truly for children of all ages. You know, a big compliment for when we put on the show is to see grandchildren, their parents, and their parents enjoying a show together, experiencing those positive, lifelong memories. There's one time in Sarasota, I'll never forget, it was our first tent, it was raining, it was storming, and my tent master from Ireland, Luis Garcia, who I knew and met in South Africa maybe 30 years prior to that, he became our tent master. We were out there laying down these floorboards so that people didn't have to walk in the water. And, you know, we had a few people with wheelchairs, so we wanted to make it easier for them. And the kind of compliments that touch your heart is something like this. So after all that, after the show, this woman was pushing her father out in a wheelchair, and managed to get out with the floorboards down on the floor. But when the gentleman, he was 92 years old, was in the wheelchair, he stopped me, grabbed me, and said, I want you to know you made me feel like a kid again. So these are the moments that are my standing ovation when I know I've touched someone and made them feel young again. There are many, many moments like that. And honestly, the passion and feeling I have for the circus is totally everything. My total being is the circus. And to see the continuation of the programs, the growth of the circus schools, you know, there is, of course, a complete change. Once upon a time, it was truly handing down the circus arts, the folk art, to the next generation. Now it's these circus schools making sure that this art form does not never end, but keeps growing and keeps continuing. There's amazing circus schools out there. You know, Robin, right now, our company is called Spirit of the Circus, and we're looking to collaborate with various art forms and see how we can infuse the circus in injecting new energy. One of the programs right now is Shakespeare. So it's our second year we're performing with Shakespeare and Company. And the idea was to introduce a younger audience that have never heard of Shakespeare, never heard Shakespeare texts, but are sitting in the seats, experiencing Shakespeare with circus that makes Shakespeare fun, right? And so it becomes interesting because even for adults that have never been to Shakespeare and getting a taste of Shakespeare in many forms, it's not a play, it's not Midsummer Night's Dream, it's not The Tempest, but it's a mixture of many, many Shakespeare's plays that texts are taken from, and the acts then play out and demonstrate the text. It's very, very powerful. And looking to the future, dance. Maybe that's a new project for Robin and I, to infuse dance, jazz, classical, hip-hop into the circus arts. And then, of course, poetry, literature. You know, imagine reading poetry out loud, and in the background you have these circus acts demonstrating the energy of the poetry and flowing through the air with the poetry in different ways. So, you know, the circus arts, as like I said, I think is the oldest family entertainment. I don't think it's going anywhere. It is evolving for sure. You won't see many, if any, animals in the circus like it used to. That's just what it is. But truly, I feel that as long as we have you coming to see the circus, circus will be around forever. So I think I've covered most of what I wanted to tell you about my journey. There's so much to talk about and so much unbelievable stories. Some of them I can't share with you. But you know, some of the questions I get asked, for example, being an aerialist, did you have to watch your diet? And did you have to get enough sleep? The answer is no. We partied hard at night after the show. And, you know, it was fun to travel around the world, to experience the different cultures. And it's such a life of camaraderie. After doing 2 shows or 3 shows that night, you'll come out of your trailer, your caravan, as we call it. Somebody else will come out. All of a sudden, somebody will make a fire. And then the guitar will come out, piano, accordion. And then we just have fun that evening, singing, dancing together. And it truly is a family environment. And then there's times where, you know, in South Africa, there's an incident in South Africa. The director and owner of Bosman Local Circus had hired this act from Ireland. They did, I think, 4 acts. And they had a bad accident, and the brother couldn't perform anymore. And so they couldn't do all the acts. So the director of the circus cut their salary. So I put on a costume. A friend of mine put on a costume. We went into the act, and they could get a full salary because we jumped in to help them. And that's what we do in the circus. We help each other. So there's many, many stories, wonderful stories where we as artists, as comrades, jumped in to help each other. And it's very, very, very gratifying. So how's that? About it right now. Well, thank you. Just so you know, this is my first time I've ever spoken and had a speech to you as solo act. No pictures, no video. So.
Great.
Hi there.
Hi, thanks so much for this talk. Could you talk a little bit more about the transition away from animals? Because as an 82-year-old, circuses had animals, and I know there was a bit of controversy when the animal rights movement. Can you talk about it? 'Cause
Sure,
maybe,
no, absolutely.
Yeah.
So again, if you go back 100 years, 50 years, 20 years, or more, yeah. I mean, we didn't have cell phones. We had television. So for anybody who wanted to see an elephant, they had to go to a zoo. So going to a circus, you could see 10 elephants, 6 elephants, whatever it was, or tigers and lions. And with that, Peter, which was the animal rights activist, started a lot of protests against caged animals or chained animals, or whatever you want to call it. I can tell you right now that in my travels, in my years traveling in Europe, United States, I've seen very little cruelty. Not to say it doesn't exist, because you know you have a bad apple everywhere. But I can tell you right now that the animals are treated with such care. And circus animals absolutely live longer than any animal in the wild, and that's a fact. But with the pressure of Peter, that eventually laws have been changed, restrictions have been made, and eventually there will absolutely be no more animals in the circus. So it's evolution, it's a change, you know, we have to go with it.
So if any of you want to come to Sarasota, this is a fabulous circus, I can tell you.
Thank you.
My mother's not alive anymore, and she would never let me get on a trapeze, even now. Where do you get your new students from? And in your case, you were how old, 11?
When I started?
Yeah.
Yeah, 11.
11. So was there somebody in your family who said you can't do that?
Everybody said I couldn't do it.
And you prevailed, obviously.
I prevailed, yeah.
So where do most of your students come from? Just local Sarasota or the whole?
Well, our school in Sarasota is open to anybody and everywhere. So we have students from Manatee County, Charlotte County that are interested. But yeah, mostly local, yeah. Yeah,
So we're Sarasotans, and we have seen your Circus Arts. It's been wonderful. how do you get insurance for your performers? It's hard to get motorcycle insurance. I can't imagine flying through it.
We become very creative. So it is a very good question, and there are very few carriers that will actually insure circus, but they do exist, and it's a very high premium that you have to pay, obviously. So, but luckily, we still are able to find insurance, but it's difficult. Yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
Can you talk a little bit about how you manage fear, or if you're afraid at all, or how that all works?
It's a great question. So, I guess some of us are less afraid of heights than others, and some of us just don't have any fear of heights. Being raised the way I was raised, hungry, you said, and with a drive to find something out there that made me stand out some way. Like I mentioned, I was a mediocre flying trapeze artist, really, in the scheme of things. But circus, like anything else, is business, right? So how do you develop a livelihood, and how do you make sure that you're getting paid a good structure for a very positive future, so to speak? So I figured it out. The more dangerous, the more I can charge. So, and literally, I just didn't have the fear. I really don't. Now, ask me if I would do it again, I'd say never. So, yeah. So, no, it was exhilarating knowing that we were doing something that literally nobody else would want to do. And truly, there's never been since an act doing what we did with Survivors, nor the finish that I did with this Crouching act. Because the risk factor is so high, and that you just, in fact, we were interviewed, what is it in Sarasota? IMG Academy? IMG, it's a sports academy. And one of the criteria is eye reflection. And they use this methodology that pilots use for jet fighter pilots' eyes. And they asked, the question was very similar to what you asked, is how do you overcome fear that you have to do what you have to do? Paycheck? No, it's just, I don't know, there's just something here, and you have to have respect for the possibility of falling and not just ignore it. So it's truly a respect. Hi there.
Thank you so much. We have a circus school in our hometown in Rochester, New York, just down the way here.
Yeah, sure.
I know a number of folks who participate in there, and it's wonderful.
Great.
I'm intrigued by your movement to combine Shakespeare with circus, and I was wondering, has this act gone on the road, and is it coming to New York?
Good question. Are you hiring? So this is our second year doing Shakespeare. It's called Circus and the Bard. And the idea is that we're hoping to tour it. That's the idea. Alan Burrows is the artistic director, who is obviously the expert in Shakespeare. We have the connection with the Circus Arts. And together the energy is really it's stupendous. It's wonderful. But yeah, no, we actually are hoping to develop a touring program. So thank you for that question.
In keeping with the animal theme, the history of ballet and Catherine de' Medici, that she brought ballet to France from Italy, and she did these 6-hour-long ballets with horses, and supposedly that's why dancers say merde to each other before they go on stage. And I wondered, when you were telling the story about your bungee cord accident, that you said that there had been horses. Did it have anything to do with the horses, or you just couldn't check your preset?
Yeah, I couldn't check my preset, that's all, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. That's an interesting story, though, good.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And one other question. What do you think of the Cirque du Soleil?
I was coming to that. Good question. So Cirque du Soleil definitely elevated the attention to the circus in a different way, in a higher level, in a higher plane, for sure. It definitely gave a very positive injection to the circus world. Although, if you were a traditionalist, the first things out of your mouth would be, that's not circus, because they didn't have animals, right? So there was this argument for a very long time. But I think Cirque du Soleil obviously proved themselves. They created what is still going on today, amazing circus arts and disciplines. And yeah, no, I have no problem with Cirque du Soleil. You know, it's contemporary, different, but great. All the way from Sarasota.
We love you there and your work.
Thank you.
It's fabulous. And you've given opportunities to children, teenagers, that they never knew they were capable of, and that they would be available to them in their local community. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
I thought you might want to mention something about your incredible wife and your incredible wife's incredible father.
Okay. We'll start with former. So, and that's a fact. So, yeah, well, Dolly is a renowned aerialist. Her father, Lou Jacobs, was a very, very famous clown on Ringling Brothers Barnum Bailey Circus. He was there for almost 60 years. How many over here have seen the movie The Greatest Show on Earth? All right, so you remember the scene with a little car coming out into the ring, and this huge clown comes out of the car. Well, that's Lou Jacobs, and that's Dolly's father. So when Dolly and I were together and we formed the Circus Arts Conservatory almost 30 years ago, you know, it was a true partnership in the vision and mission of what we wanted to accomplish. So Dolly's still with the Circus Arts Conservatory, and another good fact is that as of the 1st of January, I'd stepped down as president and CEO of the Circus Arts Conservatory, but handed it over to somebody who's extremely capable. She was an employee for 17 years. Her name is Jennifer Mitchell. And her daughter came through the program at the age of 10 years old and is now a professional aerialist. And I'll go one step further. The year before, I booked an act from Mexico. Well, a mix, Mexico, United States. So a lot of the kids were born in U.S. They have two circuses. They are called the Caballeros. There are 3 of the boys in the families doing quadruple somersaults. It's unbelievable. It's unheard of. It's impossible. One of the kids is now going for the quintuple, right? Another, just amazing. Emma, because of her abilities and learning at the Sailor Circus, and the coaching is now part of the Caballeros. So that's what we have achieved at the Sailor Circus Academy. We've raised the perception, but also the level of training and coaching. Our coaches, our acrobatic coach, for example, his name is Ryan Weston, 8th-time national champion, U.S. champion. That's our trampoline coach. So we have those coaches, and it costs money, so thanks to all the donors and supporters that support the Circus Arts Conservatory. And I hope you keep it coming. Nets, safety. Yeah, I mean, you know, all flying trapeze has safety. Most circus aerial acts now have safety devices, yeah. Well, the concrete floor is still there. Yes, sir.
That was my question.
Oh, I got you. Yeah.
Listening to you talk about, I know nothing about this. This has been very eye-opening. Any chance that we will see circus at the Olympics?
Well, they have breakdancing, so why not circus? Who knows? Dun 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 dun.
I think we should have Pedro here back in Chautauqua in the AMP. It doesn't have to be, right? They are saying these things.
There's no impossible in circus. Everything's possible.
Anyway, hint, hint, talk to Deborah Sonia Moore and the powers that be. Anyway, thank you very, very much for coming. I hope you really enjoyed this very interesting talk. Thank you, Pedro.